Rand Paul is joining us now live from Capitol Hill. So let me get your response, Senator, to what the criticism you're receiving from the president.
Well, you know, actually, I still think I'm a very positive force and actually positively working with the president on different ideas. The idea that I've been working with the president for about 6 months on is much better than Graham Cassidy, and that would be allowing people to buy across state lines insurance through a group. So if you're a carpenter or a plumber, you get to join a big association, and through that association get cheaper insurance and also get some of the protections that people want from their insurance. And I continue to work with the president on that. I'm just not with him on Graham Cassidy because Graham Cassidy actually keeps most of the Obamacare spending, and it just sort of reshuffles it. So instead of Obamacare funding going to California, it gets reshuffled to Republican states. And so I see it really more as sort of, you know, petty partisanship. Hey, let's reshuffle the deck and give the money to the Republican states, but let's keep the Obamacare spending. My concern is the debt. We have a $700 billion debt. How are we going to pay for all this?
But as you know, there's a deadline, September 30th. After September 30th, under the complex rules of the U.S. Senate, you can't just get anything passed with 50 votes. You need 60 votes. In other words, you'll need Democrats. There's a 52-48 Republican majority in the U.S. Senate. And on some of the other specific legislation that you want, like being able to buy health insurance across state lines, you definitely need 60 votes for that. Do you have, is it realistic at all to think you're going to be able to achieve what you're calling for?
Well, the interesting thing is we've been working with the Trump administration on this for 6 months now. We think they can do it through presidential interpretation of existing law. So there was a law passed in the 1970s that allows groups to form across state lines. Many corporations already do this. This is the one area of the insurance market where premiums have been relatively flat. We think that the administration is going to, in the next week or two, issue a ruling saying that, guess what? Individuals are going to be able to buy across state lines. We think they can do it without any bill or legislation from Congress. And here's the thing. My proposal that I'm working on, the president with, costs $0. The Cassidy-Graham bill is going to spend $1 trillion. It keeps the Obamacare spending, but just reshuffles who gets it. That, to my mind, is not what I promised the voters. I promised repeal. I didn't promise I would sort of keep most of it and just reshuffle who gets the proceeds.
So what I hear you saying, Senator, is if this legislation doesn't pass, the president will begin using executive orders, executive decisions to change the current Obamacare law. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, not really. It's a little more complicated than that because we don't think it has anything to do with the Obamacare law. The Obamacare law did not prevent people from buying across state lines and forming associations like buying co-ops. It actually is a 1974 law, an ERISA law. So we think that the law has been misinterpreted and could be reinterpreted by the Trump administration to allow many people. Maybe you join a credit union, maybe you join the restaurant association, and that maybe people who work in the fast food industry, a lot of whom don't have insurance now, could actually get it by buying it through one of these co-ops because they could get inexpensive insurance. But my point is, I'm offering a free market plan where you get freedom of choice. Cassidy and Graham are offering just a big government variation of Obamacare that sticks it to the Democrat states and takes the money and gives it to Republican states, but really keeps most of the Obamacare spending. And that's not something I'm for.
Is there any wiggle room at all in this legislation, in this Graham Cassidy bill? Are there any changes that could potentially make between now and a vote next week that would result in a yay vote from you?
Well, the interesting thing is there are several things in it I would agree to. If they take the things that are good in it, we could keep expansion of the health savings accounts, getting rid of the mandate taxes and penalties, and the Medicaid reform. I'm for all three of those. I'm just not for the spending proposal. I'm not for affirmatively saying, hey, let's keep $1 trillion worth of Obamacare spending. I'm not for the spending, but that's my main objection to the bill. So if they want to make it less about spending and more about repealing, I'm for repeal.
The House Speaker, Paul Ryan, says whatever the Senate passes, the House will pass next week without change and send it to the president for his signature. What's your message to the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan?
The Speaker's been wrong many times before on counting votes. I would have him ask everybody in California, every Republican, there are 14 Republican congressmen, are they happy with the fact that the new formula will take $27 billion from California? Look, there's a lot of Republican congressmen in New York and California. There's about 25 of them. They're in very competitive districts. Are they willing to go home to a competitive district and say, hey, I just voted for a bill that will take billions of dollars from New York and California and give it to North Dakota and Mississippi? You know, that's what this is about. It's a formula fight. It's a food fight over money. So we're going to reshuffle the deck, but it is not a principled repeal of Obamacare.
But you understand by your opposing Graham, Cassidy, and maybe, you know, let's say two other Republicans also oppose it, Obamacare stays the law of the land. That's what is angering the president right now. In effect, you're supporting Obamacare. Very quickly, your response.
You know, what I would say is that I think voters are pretty smart. The Republicans in my state know that nobody's been louder voice for repealing this. They also know that 7 Republicans who said they would repeal voted for repeal in 2015 and then changed their mind. So when I go home, I don't expect people are going to look at me. They're going to look to the 7 senators who actually weren't from Kentucky, who were Republicans, promised to repeal, voted once to repeal, and then switched their minds. If anybody wants to blame anybody, I think there's a lot of blame to go around there.
Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, thanks so much for joining us. I should point out, like Senator Cassidy, you also are a physician, so you've dealt your whole professional career in these issues involving healthcare. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
We're staying on top of the